My name is Dylan, and my artist was Jean Clouet. Jean Clouet was a French Renaissance portrait painter who was alive from 1480 to 1541. He specialized in very humanistic and natural pieces of art that focused on a single person. Clouet made many portraits for royals, often using very rich colors, including fine details such as stitching and jewelry. However, he has also made many portraits for not just royals, but patrons as well. Clouet was born in a time where portraits were extremely popular, as humanism was on the rise and artists started exploring new mediums and styles. Another detail is that Clouet included animals in his portraits. Whether this was his idea or the patron's, it creates a more personal and intimate piece of art. The first portrait is the portrait of the Madame of Canapes. The portrait of the Madame of Canapes, who was a maid of honor for the Queen of Cloud of France. This painting was likely made as a wedding gift to her in 1525, and it uses oil paints on panel and is 36 by 29 centimeters. This piece exemplifies how most Renaissance portraits were being done at the time, with the focus on realism, the use of oil paints, and the detail to the clothing give the painting weight. The only detractor is with the flat color background. Something that Jean Clouet focuses on a lot is fabrics, lots of detail and careful planning. The next portrait is the portrait of King Francis I. King Francis I had a thing for portraits. He enjoyed expressing his wealth and power by any means, and at the time, having portraits meant that. With this portrait, a larger canvas was used to add to the grandeur and elegance of this piece, and is one of the more recognizable portraits of the Renaissance. Painted on wood with oil paints, and coming in at 96 and 74 centimeters, and being worked on from 1525 to 1530. Francis is wearing a medallion known as the St. Michael's Medallion, which represents his solidarity with Catholicism. The use of the oils allow for colors to pop and accentuate the jewelry on the clothing. The background is flat, however it allows for the focus to go onto the sitter of the portrait. One thing to notice is that within all these portraits, faces and backgrounds are often simplified, not to zany or absurd levels, but rather to focus on what the sitter is wearing and the finery they are adorned with. The next painting is also of King Francis I. However, he's depicted as St. John the Baptist. This painting is of King Francis I depicted as St. John, yet another example of him expressing his interest in portraits. The painting was likely commissioned as a gift to King Francis's wife, showing his devotion to her and his faith. It was made with oil on wood and comes in at 96 to 79 centimeters. This piece uses animals which weren't common during this time period. They likely have symbolic meaning, where the lamb represents gentleness and purity, and the bird represents freedom. The use of naturalism and realistic depiction exemplify what Renaissance portraits were doing at the time. The use of robes and cross just add to the religious ties of King Francis, along with its relevance in art at the time. The next portrait is the portrait of Claude de Lorraine, the Duke of Guise. The portrait of Claude de Lorraine is an interesting piece, as the sitter has quite an interesting story. Claude had, for most of his life, been near the royal family, and became a well-respected general in the French War of Religion. This piece was likely made to honor and express his power and wealth. Painted on wood with oil, coming in at 29 and 26 centimeters. Clouet included the name of the sitter on this piece. However, also focused on keeping the piece natural and relatively simple while detailing jewelry and clothing. A common practice with portraits during this time, and what Jean Clouet did basically for all of his portraits, is to use a 3/4 angle. Having the sitter look slightly off into the distance and not straight forward created a more dynamic and interesting portrait. The comparison between Jean Clouet's portrait of Claude de Lorraine and Van Hemessen's self-portrait. Comparing Jean Clouet's portrait to Van Hemessen's portrait, they used the same medium of oil on wood and were made in roughly the same period. Both use a sitter and are portraits made during the Renaissance, along with having inscriptions of the sitter and information on the painting itself. The sitter has been painted realistically and are looking off into the distance. Van Hemessen's portrait is interesting as the sitter is her. She is actively doing something which is painting, which is not present in many of Clouet's. She is actively doing something which adds life as it reflects what she is doing in real life. Jean Clouet focuses on a still pose and is focused on the fine jewelry and elegance of the sitter. And that's all. Thank you.